Good afternoon, everybody. We can already see how participants are joining. We are already above 100 participants. We'll just give it a minute or two for people to join, and then we'll start.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, excellences, colleagues. It's great to have you here. Welcome to this event today that is titled Connecting Agroecological and Integrated Policies in Times of Crisis. Before starting, just a quick moment for housekeeping. Interpretation is available in all FAO official languages. And this might you actually need because we will have speakers in English and French here in this event. Please note that each session will be recorded. So if you may not wish to be recorded, please make sure that your video is off. If you want to ask questions to the panelists, then please use either the chat box or the Q&A box that appears on the bottom of your screen, because all the questions asked to the panelists will be selected from there. We would like to ask you to follow the meeting in mute mode and click the unmute button only when speaking or you are given the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabor. Maybe you can stop sharing your slide. Well, then let's start. Dear dignitaries, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, food system policy enthusiasts around the globe, welcome to this CFS high-level event, Connecting Agroecology and Integrated Policies in Times of Crisis. This is also the launch event of the Food Policy Forum for Change, which is facilitated by BioVision, IFORM Organics International, and the Millennium Institute in partnership with FAO and supported by Germany and Switzerland. The objective of this event is to exchange on policy instruments that are making food systems more sustainable and more resilient. My name is Frank Eihorn, CEO from BioVision Foundation, and I have the honor and pleasure to be your moderator of this event. I'm thrilled to present the speakers and panelists of this session, Dr. Maria Tekulve from Germany, Ambassador Dr. Papa Abdoulaye Seck from Senegal, Dr. Vijay Kumar from Andhra Pradesh in India, Emma Silibrandi from FAO's Scaling Up Agri-Ecology Initiative, Aline Bois from the French Ministry of Agriculture and Food, Ambassador Pio Van Obst from Switzerland, and last but not the least, Louise Luticolt, Executive Director of IFORM. Since this meeting is translated in various languages, I'm asked to speak slowly, so I hope that I'm not going too fast. Let me allow a few words to set the frame. What crazy times we are in. As we all know, crisis has also the potential to accelerate change. We are now witnessing an overwhelming consensus that food systems urgently have to change to become sustainable so that we can meet the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. More importantly, we are also witnessing an increasing endorsement of agroecology as a unifying concept. In this meeting, we therefore want to focus on policy instruments that are either scaling up agroecology systems or they integrate agroecological elements in mainstream systems for continuous improvement. We'll hear about the experiences of two countries, Senegal and India, more in depth, to hear about their successes, but also the challenges they had to overcome. Before we do so, we'll hear words of welcome from Dr. Marie Tekulve. She is a senior policy officer in the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. If you want to see more about her background, you will see that in a minute in the chat. Now, Maria, if you can please unmute yourself and tell us, why is food policy so important and why Germany supports the Food Policy Forum for Change?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, very good. Yes, good afternoon to everybody and welcome to this session. Thank you very much also to those who have organized this panel and of course to all those now who participate. I've seen the program. There are not too many panels on agroecology, but now I can see there are 212 participants, which is of course great. So thank you to all again and welcome this afternoon to everybody. I think, Frank, you have said it all already. There is hopefully more and more consensus increasing on what is needed. That means we want to achieve sustainable agro and food systems, and this shall be done by agroecologicals and other innovative approaches. We like this term and we support this term. But I should also say now at the beginning that for me it's quite an honor to do the welcome speech here. I will be very brief today, and the simple reason is, also Frank said it, the reason is that Germany and Switzerland and many others, of course, support this event today. I will be brief because I'm sure we are all very keen to listen to the main presenters, for instance, from Senegal, Mexico and India. Yes, there is hopefully a consensus, or not only hopefully, there is more consensus on what is needed than, let me say, 2, 3, or 4 years ago. And this is partly due to Corona crisis, but also to the climate change. Changes at policy level, that is what we are talking about, I think today at least partly, and this is my ministry, or our ministry is mainly in charge of policy dialogues and policy formulation, and changes at policy level are very crucial for such a transformation. And I hope we will not only learn about crisis, as you said, Frank, but also about successes, because there are successes and good examples. Just to inform you about the situation here in Germany, the debate in Germany over the past years, and in particular the last year, has become very lively. Some examples, there have been several debates even in our parliament, in the German Bundestag and the Development Committee. And there is a resolution from June 2019 supporting our ministry to go ahead with more agroecological approaches. What more means, okay, that is to be discussed, but there is clear support from our parliament. Our chancellery is in charge of our German federal sustainability strategy. supporting the 2030 agenda, and at present there are discussions going on in order to make an update 2022, and the discussions are quite positive. Among the different government departments in Germany, for instance, our ministry, but also the Ministry on Agriculture or Finance, or of course, Environment. We try to be, though we sometimes have hard discussions and debates, but at least we try to find one language and to be coherent. For instance, when it comes to EU policies, we have to speak with one voice, and I think this is good to do so. Civil society, of course, no need to mention, is very active worldwide, but also here in Germany. Consumers increasingly ask globally, but also in Germany, for fair, healthy and good food. Last but not least, our minister is supporting agroecological and other innovative approaches. So let me say the conditions are not too bad. They are becoming better, hopefully every day. Also, I should mention that, because I've now talked about the policy level, I should mention, of course, that through GIZ and KfW, we support several projects, and increasingly we support projects in our partner countries in Africa and in India. For instance, knowledge centers for organic agriculture in Africa, but also soil protection and soil rehabilitation in Africa. And we plan to expand our cooperation on agroecological approaches in India. And I'm really keen to hear what's going on in India. That means, and this is already more or less my summary, that means international policies and movement at least seem to go in the right direction. However, we are only at the beginning, let's call it modern, to go for modern agriculture, and at the beginning of a green recovery. And all of you know that there are many roadblocks and that we need to remove these roadblocks and challenges, and not only see challenges, as we will hear in the presentations today. I hope we will also hear successes. Our goal is, and we are convinced in our ministry, to end hunger, and this is our minister, and we are convinced a world without hunger is possible. Just today we had or still have a big international conference with that title. We end hunger while we preserve our resources, and I think this is our topic. We soon need to convince all stakeholders that these aims are not contradicting, but complementing each other. And therefore, we need to remove the most relevant hurdles. Among others, I mentioned 4 only, or 3 only important topics, and then I'm through. We need to prove and convince others that agroecological approaches work economically. It needs to pay for a farmer, but also for a region, and also for a nation, for ministry. It needs to pay to move towards organic agriculture, or when you look at it, process like to go that route. We also need to talk to stakeholders. Maybe it's not always easy to talk to, but it's not sufficient to talk among ourselves, only to talk to the converted ones. We also need to convince other stakeholders, and the most important even is to convince the most powerful agents of change, and possibly we have to find them. We need to convince them to apply, for instance, the CFS recommendations we are debating at present, as you all know. Yes, as you all know. And of course, there are many other aspects, but I want to close now, and because I'm sure we are all very keen, and I'm very keen to listen and to learn from others. And again, I'm very glad, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria de Kulve, for this excellent speech, showing us what's happening in Germany, but also in the EU and on the international level, and reminding us that we need to remove a couple of hurdles or roadblock in order to get to modern agriculture, which is finally reconciling the development, economic development dimension, the environmental dimension, and the social dimension. That was excellent. Let us now turn to our first keynote speaker in Senegal, Ambassador Dr. Papa Abdoulaye Seck. He has been a former agricultural minister in Senegal, so he knows what he's talking about. He is now the ambassador to the Rome-based agencies, and we are really keen to hear your experiences, what you have done in Senegal, what is the situation there, so that we can learn from it. Dr. Seck will present in French. If your French got a bit rusty, you can choose the dolmetsch or the translation option here so that you can choose the language of your choice. Papa Abdoulaye Seck, the floor is yours now for the next 7 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je voudrais tout d'abord saluer tous les participants à cette importante session. Au Sénégal, nous estimons que pour l'émergence d'une agriculture productive et durable, il faut absolument considérer l'agroécologie. Mais nous pensons également que les approches agroécologiques doivent être co-construites. Elles doivent être co-gérées. Elles doivent être co-évaluées par l'ensemble des acteurs intervenant au niveau des chaînes de valeur, et ces approches doivent aussi être fondées sur des évidences scientifiques. Pourquoi? Parce que nous sommes pour une souveraineté alimentaire, nous sommes pour la durabilité de notre agriculture, ce qui signifie que les générations actuelles ne doivent pas empêcher les générations futures de pouvoir produire et se nourrir de façon durable. C'est pourquoi, au Sénégal, nous avons mis en place une plateforme dénommée Dynamique pour une transition agroécologique au Sénégal, d'ITAS. Et comment se passent les choses au niveau de cette plateforme? En termes très concrets, à la base, les acteurs ruraux ont tenu des ateliers portant sur de bonnes pratiques agroécologiques. Et ces acteurs ont aussi formulé des recommandations concrètes et pragmatiques couvrant aussi bien l'amont que l'aval de la production agricole. Au niveau des villes, les consommateurs ont mené eux aussi des réflexions sur la transition agroécologique et la sécurité des aliments. Donc, les acteurs ruraux ont tenu leur session, les citadins aussi ont tenu leur session. Et au terme de ce très long processus, ayant impliqué tout le monde, un rapport a été remis à son Excellence M. Macky Sall, président de la République du Sénégal, ceci dans le but d'alimenter le plan Sénégal émergent, volet agriculture, c'est-à-dire le PSE vert, qui est notre politique intégrée pour une transition agroécologique. C'est dire donc que pour nous, nous n'avons pas opté pour une approche top-down en ce qui concerne l'agroécologie. nous avons plutôt considéré que la meilleure des politiques est celle qui est revendiquée par l'ensemble des acteurs. Donc, aussi bien les acteurs ruraux que les acteurs publics et les citadins, c'est dans le cadre de réflexion concertée que nous avons alimenté effectivement le PSE vert dans notre pays. Et nous avons constaté aussi dans notre pays que face à une situation de crise comme celle que nous vivons, c'est-à-dire la COVID-19, les collectivités qui sont engagées dans l'agroécologie ont développé une plus forte résilience. Je le dis à titre d'expert du domaine. Et récemment, avec d'ailleurs l'Académie d'agriculture de France, j'ai été co-auteur de cet ouvrage qui effectivement montre comment les collectivités ont pu s'en sortir ou veulent s'en sortir en ce qui concerne la COVID-19. Puisque je n'ai que quelques minutes, je vais essayer donc d'aller vite en disant que mon pays, le Sénégal, salue l'initiative de la FAO sur le scaling up de l'agroécologie, salue les recommandations politiques du CSA sur l'agroécologie et les approches innovantes, de même que les directives volontaires sur les systèmes alimentaires. Nous plaidons aussi, nous, au Sénégal, pour une prise en charge effective de l'agroécologie lors du sommet sur les systèmes alimentaires prévu en 2020, mais aussi dans le nouveau cadre stratégique de la FAO. Enfin, notre pays invite l'ensemble des participants qui ne l'ont pas encore fait de rejoindre le groupe des amis de l'agroécologie pour que nous puissions collectivement réfléchir et tout mettre en œuvre pour assurer une promotion de l'agroécologie. Nous estimons que sur la base d'évidences scientifiques, il peut être établi aujourd'hui que l'agroécologie peut apporter une contribution remarquable pour l'atteinte des ODD et que tous les préjugés qui tournent autour de la productivité, autour de l'innovation technologique et autres, si le temps l'avait permis, on aurait démontré à partir d'évidences scientifiques qu'il y a beaucoup de préjugés en ce qui concerne l'agroécologie, mais c'est avec des sessions comme celle que nous sommes en train de tenir que nous pourrons rassembler un certain nombre d'éléments pertinents, les porter à l'attention des plus sceptiques, en leur disant simplement ceci: l'agroécologie, c'est quoi? C'est nourrir le monde sans le détruire. Et personne ne veut qu'on détruise le monde. Donc, si nous arrivons à expliquer convenablement ce que nous voulons en ce qui concerne l'agroécologie, je crois que nous serons de plus en plus nombreux. Mesdames, Messieurs, c'est les quelques mots que je voudrais porter à votre attention. Et bien évidemment, je serai disposé à entrer dans les détails, surtout concernant les évidences scientifiques, si des questions du genre me sont posées. Je vous remercie.
Ambassador Papa Abdoulaye Seck, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation, which showed the integrated bottom-up approach that the Senegal government is taking. If some of the participants have questions already now to Mr. Seck, you can post them under the Q&A section. We will get back to it during the panel discussion. I also want to welcome all participants who have joined in the meantime. I'm excited to see that more than 260 participants are now with us. That's a wonderful number. Moving now from West Africa, from the national level to the state level in South Asia, in India, going to Andhra Pradesh, a state with a population of, if I'm not mistaken, 50 million people, so roughly the size of Spain. There we have Dr. Vijay Kumar with us. He is a celebrity, I can say. He is the key promoter of the natural farming initiative in the state, which has reached millions of farmers. And we are very excited to have you here. Mr. Vijay Kumar, you are the head of the Department of Natural Farming, and I think you need to explain a bit what exactly you are doing there and how you did this miracle to scale up natural farming so tremendously in your state. The floor is yours for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Is the screen visible, Frank?
It is coming up, yes. I think you can, yeah, now it's presenting. Wonderful. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Frank, and distinguished panelists and distinguished participants. A warm welcome to all of you from India. The present crisis is a very rude reminder that business as usual will not work. We must also remember that there will be even bigger challenges in the future. So we in Andhra Pradesh believe very strongly that transforming agriculture in harmony with nature is the most important transformation which will protect the present generation and also the future generations. So our vision is that in a population of 50 million people, we have around 6 million farmers and 8 million hectares. Our vision is to enroll all 6 million farmers by 2027. So I will focus on how we have done, because I think all of us are agreed that this needs to be done. We started the program in the year 2016 through the state government initiative. And we started with around 40,000 farmers in 700 villages. And last year we touched 700,000 farmers, and that means scaled up 17 times in 4 years. And we are till last year, we were present our footprint was present in 25% villages of the state, and 10% farmers had been enrolled. This year, we are even more ambitious. We are increasing the coverage to 34% villages and 16% farmers. So we will touch 1 million farmers and farm workers this year. We are looking at it from farmers' livelihoods. And please remember that in India, 86% of farmers are small and marginal farmers. So their livelihoods is really under distress on account of the chemical agriculture. So natural farming is meant for protecting their livelihoods and ensuring food and nutrition security. And we want our youth to get decent jobs, and we want to preserve the environment for the next generation. So these were the objectives, and the strategy that we followed, I will explain in the next slide. But the money for this program is coming from government schemes, philanthropies, and this year we are also, we have borrowed about 90 million euros from KfW Bank, and we're extremely thankful to government of Germany for the speed with which this proposal was finalized. So there is funding from government, but it's not entirely government's work. These are our basic universal principles of natural farming that we are following. At the same time, what is unique to India is the use of cow dung, cow urine, which is traditional agriculture, but modified, because then these formulations are not biofertilizers, but they are inoculum. And you can see in these photographs, farmers are preparing various formulations based out of cow dung and cow urine. So one of the reasons why scaling up has happened so quickly is that these principles, these practices are part of our culture, part of our tradition. So that is one of the reasons. Now, state government has actually recently formed a separate department of natural farming. I'm heading that department. And the reasons why we could scale up was a partnership between government, civil society organizations, and grassroots institutions. Our success is because of a 20-year investment in rural women. Collectivizing the women in the form of women self-help groups has been one of the main reasons for our success. And the extension work is done through champion farmers. You can see in this photograph, it's a 70-year-old lady. She's a champion farmer, and she's the one who is doing the training. So our critical innovations include, use of ICT, video disseminations, and these champion farmers are our heroes. We have about 6,500 of them at the rate of 1 per 100 farmers. So this program incubates champions to take knowledge to other farmers. We also realize it's not a short-term investment. We believe that we need to spend about 5 to 7 years. So there is time taken for farmers to enroll themselves. We assume it will take about 5 years in a village of around 500 farmers. But each farmer also has a journey. It's a 3 to 6 year journey to realize the benefits, to overcome initial problems, and to continue with it. So I think even though there's been a lot of urgency in moving over to natural farming, but without a proper transition strategy, we can't make it. And these kitchen gardens or nutrition gardens really helped us in the COVID days. So last year, about 250,000 homestead gardens were promoted. And this year, we plan to promote 700,000 such gardens to take care of the household nutrition. And we are building science into our work. So we are generating a lot of scientific evidence. We have collaborations with global institutions. FAO is one of our critical champions, and UN Environment. And finally, there's a lot of interest from various states and various countries. So we are supporting other states in India, and we're also having connections with countries in Africa and Mexico. So I'll conclude here because of shortage of time, but I welcome this Food Policy Forum for Change because I believe these collaborations, networks are critical for scaling up. And I really must, thank KFW, GIZ, IFOAM, FAO for the kind of support they have provided to us. Thank you very much. The time was very brief, but I hope I've been able to convey some flavor of what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vijay Kumar. And I think you did very well in this short time to give us a glimpse of what's happening in Andhra Pradesh and India to combine food security improvement with also the improvement of incomes and nutrition. I think that's very impressive. What I also want to mention is what you told me earlier, that you started now exchanging on successful policy instruments, not only with your other peers in other states in India, but also with governments in Kenya, Mexico, and Rwanda. So that shows that policymakers do like to exchange experiences and can learn from other places, even if conditions are different there. I think that's very encouraging. We also see that policies do matter. They shape the rules, they shape the incentives and disincentives, they steer money flows. And we will hear now from FAO how they support policies at country level. So the efforts of countries to adopt policies that are conducive to food system transformation and that are built on agroecology. And I want to introduce Emma Siliprandi. She is the lead focal point for the Scaling Up Agroecology initiative at FAO. Emma, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Frank. I will also share my screen. And please tell me if it worked.
It's coming up.
It's coming up.
Wonderful. We can see it.
Okay. So the presentation is full. Isn't the full screen?
Yes, full screen. Wonderful. You can go ahead.
Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this important event. I'd like to start my presentation talking about the importance of agroecology to achieve the SDGs. Let me see. Yeah. As we all know, the SDG recognize the stronger interconnectivity among development goals. Issues of hunger and malnutrition are linked to issues to equity, justice, employment, along with environmental sustainability. This stresses the need for holistic approaches that at the same time respond to different challenges, such as hunger, malnutrition, human health, climate change, environmental degradation, biodiversity, and recently in response to the outbreak of global pandemics. We all talked about this. Agroecology is recognized as one of these holistic approaches. The Scaling Up Agroecology initiative implemented jointly by FAO, UN agencies, and a diversity of partners is catalyzing action and cooperation to scale up agroecology. The initiative works at two different levels. The first one at the macro governance level, aiming to raise awareness on the potential contribution of the agroecological approaches to the solution of the main problems the food system are facing. And at the country level, supporting the implementation of concrete policies and programs that facilitate the agroecological transitions. So you can have a general idea of the initiative in this slide. You know that we work with the policy instruments, we work with the potential synergies and cooperation, and we try to mainstream agroecology in projects and knowledge platforms. This is a little bit what we do. Talking about the global processes as examples of the macro level action, we can mention the active participation in the UN fora as the CFS processes for the elaboration of guidelines on food systems that other speakers mentioned, and the policy recommendations on agroecology and other innovative approaches that we will discuss the first draft this week, really. And we participate also in other UN fora, like the Decade of Family Farming, the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, the Coronivia Joint Work on Agriculture, etc. We are all witnessing an increasing body of evidence on how integrated agroecological approaches can help build conducive and coherent policies environment, which underpin and accelerate transitions to sustainable food systems. For example, regarding climate change, agroecology has significant mitigation and adaptation potential by promoting healthy soils, heterogeneity, diversity, and incorporating social dimensions. Its guiding elements allow countries to build resilience while having mitigation co-benefits. A joint FAO BioVision recently released study provides this evidence and is guiding discussions on how better incorporate agroecology in the nationally determined contribution processes, the NDCs. Agroecological approaches can also be important for territorial development policies, combining use of landscapes and ecosystems with enhanced circular economies and proximity markets. As a result, food security and nutrition is improved, while the system becomes more resilient and self-sufficient. To name a few examples, we are supporting territorial processes in India and Andhra Pradesh, as Vijay just mentioned, and in Buenos Aires province in Argentina. It's a very interesting work that we are supporting right now. It's important to mention also that we have now the 10 elements of agroecology, which were endorsed by FAO member nations in December 2019 as an analytical framework to support the design of the differentiated paths for agriculture and food system transformation. The 10 elements translate the complexity of food and agriculture systems into a simple or holistic version of a reality that can facilitate decision-making at different scales. Another important area of work is the creating evidence, as you mentioned before. We developed a methodology called TAPE, Tool for Agroecological Performance Evaluation, to characterize and assess the performance of agroecological experiences in a multidimensional way. The objective is to produce evidence on the performance of agroecological systems through a global database to give support to policymakers. It's not just a study, it's not just a methodology to have this characterization. The idea is that the data, the information, the analysis that came out from these studies support policymakers on their decisions. We are now promoting online trainings on how to use this methodology, and we will test it across different regions in the next period. You know that with the COVID situation, it's kind of difficult to have this testing right now, but we are adapting our way of work to work in online also with farmers. These approaches have the potential to improve public efficiency through interministerial policy design and implementation, bringing together agricultural, environmental, socioeconomic sectors, which often operate isolated. This is a very, very important challenge that we face, to break the silos that still exists at a government level. Well, just you to know a little bit where we are at the moment. We are providing support to these processes at regional level in West Africa, Central Asia, Mekong region, Latin America and the Caribbean. And at national level, we are working with Mexico, Senegal, Nicaragua, Uruguay, São Tomé and Príncipe, among others. These are just some examples. You can have a broader idea on what's going on in the agroecological area, about events, last publications, public policies, videos, etc. Consulting the Agroecology Knowledge Hub, our website, which is being constantly updated. The Agri-Ecology Lex, which is a database for agroecological normative frameworks, includes 176 legal frameworks, policies, and programs that can be easily accessed by anyone interested in these topics. As you can see, all these activities are interconnected. We are working with policy processes. We are working in generating evidence. We are working in building connections among actors in different levels, but everything is interconnected. The evidence, tools, and holistic frameworks mentioned here are being used by different stakeholders and actors to inform policy making. In this regard, FAO recognizes the important contributions of the Food Policy Forum for Change as an excellent space to learn together with actors engaged in field experiences about the existing gaps and the difficulties that they are facing in order to better address these barriers and search for solutions at different levels. To conclude, we are glad to see how agroecological approaches are integrated into the innovative visions and the strategies to build sustainable food systems. Such holistic approaches allow us to amplify the outreach of the interventions and to reconcile the food, the people, and the planet. FAO and the Scaling Up Agroecology Initiative stand ready to support these efforts. Thank you very much for your attention.
And thank you, Emma, very much for this impressive presentation to see what all is going on in the various countries. And at FAO, you mentioned so many promising developments, so many countries engaging. And I wonder, is that really already the sign that a real paradigm shift is happening, which is probably long in the making, remembering the IASTD report on the situation of agricultural knowledge systems in the world 10, 12 years ago. And what has happened since then, I just want to mention there is a book just coming out from what are the different reports, what are the developments since that time. And I think that shows how many thoughts and how many developments have taken place since then. With this, I also want to invite everybody to share in the chat any new developments or reports which are relevant for this topic of food system policies. We want to crowdsource the knowledge and the state of the situation through this chat, and to use the Q&A function for posting questions to the speakers. After these three impressive keynote speeches, we turn to the panel discussion. Here I will address questions to our panelists, but you again have the possibility to ask your questions in the Q&A function, and we try our best to address them later. And I will start with the first question to Aline Bois. She is the Deputy Head of the Agri-Ecology project at the French Ministry of Agriculture and Food. Aline, are you there? If you can unmute yourself. And I would like to ask you first, how did France support the transformation of agriculture and food systems along agroecological principles? How did this happen? Can you tell us about that? Thank you.
Oui, bonjour. Donc, je vais parler en français pour évoquer le projet agroécologique pour la France, ce qu'on a porté en France. Donc, ça a été porté dès 2012 par le précédent gouvernement, qu'on a donc appelé un projet agroécologique pour la France. Ça s'est traduit par la construction d'un plan d'action qui a été co-construit avec, donc je retrouve des éléments qui ont été évoqués par les précédents intervenants, qui a vraiment été co-construit par plusieurs partenaires, donc les représentants des agriculteurs, le monde de la recherche, les acteurs de l'environnement. Et ça s'est aussi traduit par, et ça s'est conforté dans le fait qu'on a inscrit l'agroécologie dans nos politiques publiques, dans une loi pour l'agriculture en 2014. Donc, je vais essayer de parler de quelques grands axes qu'on a mis dans le projet agroécologique et qui montrent comment on a mobilisé des instruments habituels du ministère. Donc, il y a un aspect évidemment continuum recherche, conseil, formation. Donc, on a soutenu la recherche autour de l'agroécologie avec des appels à projets, ce qui c'est la façon un peu normale qu'on soutient la recherche en France, mais là, on a mis ces appels à projets sur l'agroécologie. On a incité aussi les organismes de développement et de conseil agricole qui donc s'adressent aux agriculteurs qui sont en partie cofinancés par l'État. On les a orientés, on leur a demandé de travailler et d'accompagner les agriculteurs dans cette transition agroécologique. Le ministère de l'Agriculture français est responsable de l'enseignement agricole technique qui va donc former nos futurs agriculteurs et nos futurs conseillers. Et donc, on a aussi engagé un fort mouvement vers l'agroécologie dans l'enseignement avec des nouveaux programmes, des nouveaux diplômes et une forte mobilisation pour former les enseignants à ces nouvelles techniques et à aussi de la pluridisciplinarité, à essayer d'éviter les choses en silo. On a utilisé les instruments de soutien plus classiques de nos agricultures, notamment à travers les outils de la politique agricole commune. On a, dans toutes les actions que le ministère porte dans ce projet agroécologique, on a aussi un volet international. Donc, je retrouve aussi l'intervention précédente. On a essayé, dans nos politiques de soutien, de coopération, de négociation à l'international, de porter l'agroécologie. Je voulais revenir aussi sur cet aspect de co-construction. C'est sûr que ça a pris du temps pour arriver à construire qu'est-ce que c'était l'agroécologie en France, comment on pouvait le mettre en place. Mais de mobiliser tout le monde, ça a permis de construire un objectif commun. J'ai évoqué la loi de 2014, alors je voulais quand même signaler que, au-delà des instruments plus habituels, on a créé un outil innovant pour revenir aussi sur l'aspect quelle échelle et à quel échelon il faut faire de l'agroécologie. Ce sont les groupes d'intérêts économiques et environnementaux. Donc, c'est des collectifs d'agriculteurs qui se rassemblent volontairement pour s'engager dans la transition. Ils sont reconnus par l'État et donc on favorise les échanges entre pairs, les échanges entre agriculteurs, l'expérimentation partagée pour construire des projets agroécologiques. J'ai évoqué un petit peu tout à l'heure la loi d'avenir de 2014 et en fait, dedans, on dit que les politiques publiques françaises, elles visent à promouvoir et à pérenniser les systèmes de production agroécologique avec un objectif de triple performance. Donc, ça veut dire, voilà, on s'est engagé nous-mêmes, le gouvernement, à dire que toutes nos politiques publiques doivent œuvrer à la transition agroécologique. Je retrouve aussi un peu le débat de tout à l'heure de ce qu'évoquait la FAO. C'est-à-dire, avant, en France, on avait un peu l'habitude de traiter le soutien à la production agricole d'un côté et la protection de l'environnement de façon déconnectée. Et là, on dit l'agroécologie, ça permet de faire le lien entre... grâce à l'agroécologie, on peut produire en prenant soin des ressources naturelles, en s'appuyant sur l'environnement. Donc, ça permet aussi d'avoir cette vision partagée, de construire avec les gens qui veulent qu'on produise de l'alimentaire et les gens qui veulent protéger les ressources et l'environnement.
Merci beaucoup, Aline Bois. Thank you very much, Aline Bois. That was very interesting to see how you are integrating agroecology in all the different policies, be it research on international policy, on environmental policy, also in the vocational training and so on. Can I ask, why did you choose not to go for a specific agroecological standalone policy, but rather try to integrate them into all the different policies? What was the motivation there, or what is the rationale? You need to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Oui, ça doit être bon là. Donc justement, c'est ce que j'évoquais tout à l'heure, c'est de dire que c'est bien tout le monde qui doit être mobilisé sur l'agroécologie. On n'a pas voulu créer un bureau spécifique de l'agroécologie qui soit déconnecté du bureau de l'international, du bureau des filières, du bureau de l'environnement, et bien dire c'est tous les agents qui sont mobilisés pour œuvrer à l'agroécologie. Et vraiment, au démarrage aussi du plan d'action, ça a été vraiment... Il y a eu un aspect formation de tous les agents du ministère pour dire on œuvre ensemble à cette transition et on est tous acteurs avec les partenaires. Ça aussi, ça a été un peu novateur d'impliquer de travailler plus avec les partenaires agriculteurs, conseillers. Mais vraiment, c'était cet aspect en disant on y arrivera tous ensemble. Et puis, pour être sûr que que ça fonctionne, on va dire, de mobiliser les instruments habituels. C'est-à-dire que les chercheurs, c'était sur les mêmes outils que précédemment. Les conseillers agricoles, on ne sortait pas complètement de leur crâne, mais on orientait vers l'agroécologie. Et c'est comme ça, en tout cas à notre sentiment, qu'on a réussi cet objectif de mobiliser tout le monde, de construire une vision partagée. Et vraiment, je ne l'ai peut-être pas dit dans mon intervention, mais au démarrage sur le projet agroécologique, ça a vraiment donné du sens aussi aux fonctionnaires, aux agents de ce ministère, en disant on œuvre tous dans cet objectif. On ne fait pas que du descendant, ce qui était aussi nouveau et perturbant pour nous, agents du ministère, mais voilà, pour mobiliser tout le monde pour réussir à cet objectif.
Getting everybody on board, that I imagine is absolutely key in all the countries where you want to advance this type of policies. From France, we switch over to Switzerland, but Pio Venups, I won't ask you about the situation in Swiss agriculture, but more from the international policy perspective. Ambassador Pio Venups, he is a permanent representative of Switzerland to the Rome-based agencies, and he has also been in charge of the global program Food Security of Switzerland, so he knows very well the international perspective of agroecology. Switzerland is supporting agroecology a lot. Why is that so? What type of policies at local, national, regional level are you promoting? And why are you doing that? How are you doing that?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Properly? Thank you. So yes, in order to speak about the international level, sorry, but I have to go back to my personal experience at the national level. It was 1991, prehistory, when I was representing a farmers union of southern part of Switzerland, and at the Chamber of Agriculture, I proposed to shift all our agriculture in our region to organic production and organize a brand it. And of course, this was dismissed as a ridiculous idea, because they were saying, well, what are you talking about? There is no evidence that actually we would find markers. There is no evidence that it works. So first element was, okay, there is apparently not evidence, even though many farmers were already producing on agroecological principles. So their evidence was clear, but we didn't have the evidence if you want to go into the necessary policy dialogue that is needed. Everybody's talking about, you need the evidence if you want to engage in a policy dialogue. Why would need to engage in a policy dialogue? Because at a certain moment you want to interfere in the normative aspect, as France just told us clearly. So in the case of Switzerland, there was no legal basis or legal provision in order to at least offer an incentive to shift from one system to the other, or at least incentive to reduce maybe some damages or collateral damages that other systems were producing. So to put it there was not enough of a sense of a crisis, because when the title of today's work is about crisis, right? And systemic changes do happen with crisis. It's very rare that you have systemic changes without huge crisis. So the sense of crisis was not there. And meanwhile, many were active in Switzerland, believing simply in this. And therefore, we have a research institutions that are all dedicated in organic farming. Or we developed instruments like VOCAT, that we use a lot at the international level to compare different agroecological ways to produce, some 1,500 different ways of producing on agroecological principle, in order to have exactly this evidence-based and foster a dialogue. And it's one, as explained, that in the case of India, you need somebody that is showing, but also you need to exchange, to inter-exchange about different experiences, and then you can move towards this political arena. Why it became for us so urgent? Yeah, because we are an urbanized country, and urbanization with climate change, with water pollution, with all sorts of different problems, suddenly we realize that maybe it's good to go back to our traditions, because we have tradition, cultures, a way to get together in culture in Switzerland, and maybe think it a little bit, what kind of small changes we can bring to make it more sustainable and better for all of us. From there, to step to the international arena is not too difficult, because meanwhile, you have been working so much on your own systems. You have been already experiencing your internal policy dialogue at local level, that it is not too difficult and through certain projects to support changes adapted, and of course needs to be adapted to the conditions where you are offering support. It's not by chance that SDC with the global program on food security is shifting from 20 to 50% of their support will be towards projects that are in line with agroecological principles. So it's a kind of a moving. You know, Swiss, we go step by step. We don't make changes very fast, but then once it's clear, then we move and there is no comeback. This is the way we work also on international level, supporting this kind of initiatives at the African Union and so on.
And I think this is very clear that Switzerland is now moving into the direction of agroecology. There is also a study on the money flows which are going to research in agroecology, and I think Switzerland is playing a very important role there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Pio Venups. We will get back to you in a minute. I would have a question to Ambassador Sek. In Senegal, how did it work to integrate agroecological principles in policies at local and regional level? And do you see a role also for municipalities, say cities? If you could tell us more about that. Ambassador Sek, are you there? Yes.
Je voudrais d'abord dire que dans mon exposé, j'ai eu à préciser que pour nous au Sénégal, l'agroécologie, ce n'est pas uniquement une affaire de gouvernement. L'agroécologie concerne toute la société. Par conséquent, si on me demande qu'est-ce que le gouvernement a fait pour que les gens adhèrent, non. Le gouvernement est un acteur parmi tant d'acteurs. Si on veut décréter l'agroécologie en disant notre pays passe à l'agroécologie, ça ne marchera pas. Il faut une approche participative, il faut une approche itérative. C'est pourquoi nous avons une plateforme et dans le cadre de cette plateforme, de la base jusqu'au sommet, il y a une implication de tous les acteurs publics et privés. Au niveau national, au niveau des régions, à la base, mais les acteurs eux-mêmes ont pris des responsabilités dans le cadre de cette plateforme sur la dynamique pour la transition agroécologique au Sénégal. Ensuite, au niveau des villes, ce sont les consommateurs qui ont eu à prendre la parole. Mais ce qui est absolument remarquable, c'est le fait que c'est le président de la République lui-même qui a reçu le rapport provenant de l'ensemble des acteurs et estime que ça peut être un élément essentiel dans le cadre du PSE vert, qui est notre politique intégrée en matière d'agroécologie. Donc, nous ne sommes pas pour une agroécologie décrétée par un gouvernement. Non, nous sommes pour une approche, comment ça s'appelle, participative et itérative. Et quand on parle aussi d'agroécologie, on ne peut pas ignorer le savoir endogène. Les populations rurales pratiquent l'agroécologie. Il faut peut-être que nous comprenions pourquoi ils font ce qu'ils font. Souvent, les agriculteurs ont de bonnes raisons de faire ce qu'ils font. Nous ne comprenons pas ce qu'ils font et nous disons que ce n'est pas bon. Ou nous sommes sceptiques. C'est ça le problème qu'il y a dans ce monde-là. La science est aussi alimentée par un savoir endogène. Et on peut rationaliser un savoir endogène. D'où l'importance d'avoir une recherche agricole qui revisite ces paradigmes et essaie aussi de partir du savoir endogène pour voir comment passer d'une connaissance sensible à une connaissance rationnelle. En fait, au Sénégal, c'est ça que nous avons essayé de faire.
Okay.
Je peux continuer ou je m'en arrête là?
I didn't want to interrupt you. Please go on, just for a short moment.
Ok. Donc, je m'en arrête là en attendant d'autres questions. Voilà ce que j'ai.
Merci, Ambassador Sek. I just noticed that you also stressed the importance of scientific evidence for policymaking, as Ambassador Venobst just told us about. A last question to a panelist from my side before we turn to the chat questions, because there are so many. Vijay Kumar, I mean, policymakers, usually they shine the spotlight on the bright side of their achievements, but I'm sure there were also a couple of challenges you had to overcome. So what were the main challenges in developing the ownership for natural farming among the government level, among the policymakers? How did you do that, and what were the key success factors? You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. You must remember that the entire agriculture department was and is working on a paradigm of chemical agriculture. And so is the case with the Agriculture University. And over the last 60, 70 years, farmers have been brainwashed into thinking that without chemicals, you can't do agriculture. So these were the challenges. But on the positive side, we had very good civil society organizations who had been working for a long time in proving that agroecology works. So I had to work at multiple levels. I was heading the agriculture department. I was convinced it works, but I have to show it on ground. So in spite of the fact that my department was not believing it internally, I decided that we'll develop a proof of concept. So we took up those villages where women self-help groups had done some work on sustainable agriculture. We also sent champion farmers who were best practitioners to work with them. So I had to work at different levels, and we realized that the farmers were desperate, were keen for a change. In fact, that was the biggest strength I had. It is not that we were pushing them. They were keen to change because the current system was so inimical to their economic interests. So there was a support from the government in the sense that we said, okay, it's a pilot. Let us see whether it gives results or not. And fortunately, because of our long tradition of women self-help groups and the use of farmer trainers, we could show results in the very first year. And that, created a sense of confidence that we should take it more seriously. And our advantage was the number of women farmers who had been organized. So once this change happens, it has a ripple effect. So I believe every country, anywhere between 10 to 20% farmers changing will create a tipping point.
Getting a critical mass, and seeing is believing. That's what is probably most effective to convince policymakers. Thanks for these questions. Now, Gabor, I hand over to you because you had the difficult task to scroll through the Q&A section and identify the questions you can now shoot at the panelists. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Frank. So as you can very well see from the Q&A section, agroecology is a highly political issue. So it's not just a set of practices or science, because we have a lot of questions that allude to the UN Food Systems Summit, asking how agroecology could play a prominent role there? Why is it that many of the leaders who lead the food preparations for the Food Systems Summit neglect agroecology, and how do our speakers feel about it? Particularly, they ask for support from Dr. Kumar and Dr. Sek, as well as wonder what FAO's, so Emma's opinion about that is. So maybe we could start with that bunch of questions. So the Food Systems Summit and agroecology. Who wants to take this up? Emma, will you?
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, this is a very difficult question, because all of us that are here, we would like to have agroecology in a higher level, in a political level, in all these UN fora. We know that this is important, as Frank said, and Ambassador Pio also mentioned. This is what will interfere in the normatives, etc. But we know that in this political space there are a lot of pressure, economic and political pressure itself. So it's not only one of or other organization that defines the way that the forum will be held, and we are, of course, we are in the middle of a lot of pressure, as I know. So I've heard that there are some articulations, especially among civil society organizations, to have a parallel forum or something like that, to press or to have more incidents over the agenda. And yeah, we have limited power of defining this. And I of course, I see, I am very worried about this disappearance of agroecology. But we are trying to work with people from climate change sector, people from biodiversity sector, and we are trying to get in another way, as we always do. That's what I have for the time being. Thank you.
So policy at the international level, that's a very important contribution. Gabor, when you choose the next questions, I think we should really stick to a policy topic. I see there are also a lot of questions related to agroecology in general. So the topic of this event is really food system policies. I hand back over to you, Gabor.
Yes, I fully agree. I just didn't want to avoid this because there were a lot of questions regarding that. So there are questions to, for example, Dr. Sek asking about very concrete policy measures, how it works in Senegal. And also there is a question from Paul Holmbeck asking if there were efforts to strengthen capacity in organic or agroecological NGOs as partners in policy development and as change agents working with policy implementation on the ground. So these are questions to our Senegalese and Indian speaker.
Who picks it up first? Ambassador Sek or Dr. Vijay Kumar? Vijay, can I give you the word?
Yeah. I think there's a very important role for civil society organizations and governments to work together in bringing this change. Because of the, as I mentioned earlier, that 60, 70 years of chemical agriculture, the farmer's mindset, that is the most important and most difficult thing to change. And this transition from a chemical agriculture to agroecology, organic agriculture, or natural farming that facilitation is very important. And that is where a role of a civil society organization on the one hand, and then the role of farmers organizations, the role of women's organizations, they are both the practitioners, but they also become the facilitators. So somewhere it's not just the civil society organizations, but it is civil society organizations and farmers organizations and women organizations which have to be empowered. So in our program, bulk of the investment is in building these capacities of community institutions to manage this process of transformation. It's very important and it cannot happen in a top-down manner. So we have to have a facilitation which understands farmers, which understands their concerns.
Okay, so capacity building of local organizations, local stakeholders, that's key. Is this also a conclusion in Senegal, Ambassador Papa Abdoulaye Seck? Would you like to share your experiences?
Bon, je vais peut-être me répéter.
No need to repeat.
Je pense que si nous voulons vraiment réussir en ce qui concerne l'agroécologie, il faut que nous comprenions définitivement que l'État est un acteur parmi tant d'acteurs, bien qu'il ait un rôle majeur à jouer. Quand on dit quelles sont les mesures, moi je n'aime pas trop le terme de mesures prises pour développer ceci ou cela. Ce que je préfère, c'est plutôt le fait de dire quels sont les accompagnements apportés par l'État en traduisant. Vous m'entendez?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Please go on.
Ce qui me paraît important, c'est de dire quels sont les éléments provenant de la base et que l'État a eu à accompagner. C'est ça une approche participative. Je vous ai dit qu'il y a eu des discussions à la base, il y a eu des discussions au niveau des villes, et on a remis au président de la République un rapport. Mais c'est quelque chose d'extraordinaire. Ça veut dire que nous n'avons pas décidé et ensuite on dit aux gens, qu'est-ce que vous voulez? Ce sont les gens qui ont dit ce qu'ils veulent. Et l'État les accompagne dans ce processus en tant qu'acteur chargé de la conception et de la régulation. C'est comme ça qu'il faut raisonner. Mais si on ne comprend pas qu'on est dans une économie rurale qui est libéralisée et co-gérée, ça va nous rendre à une économie de type collectiviste.
Oh, now we are losing you.
Allô?
Oh, now you're back.
Vous m'entendez?
Yes, just please
moi, je
repeat
ne vous
the last
entends plus. Hein? I don't hear you.
Please repeat
Hello?
the last sentence if possible.
Allô? Allô?
Okay, I think there is a connection problem. Thank you very much, Mr. Seck. I would hand back to, if that's okay, I would hand back to.
Je vous rappelle, je suis en vidéoconférence.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear us.
Allô? Allô?
Yes, Mr. Seck.
Moi, je n'entends plus. Hein?
Because there is a problem with the connectivity, I would suggest that we move to a next question in the sake of time. Thank you. Gabor, can you please ask a next question?
Yes, Gurbu Bular is asking that we are focusing a lot on the production side, and there's a strong need to engage with consumer businesses so that they realize the value of going sustainable. So the pull side is also important. So he's asking what sort of policy measures, policy initiatives there are in this regard, particularly in the global north. So maybe our German and Swiss speaker could answer that. As well
if you want, I can just start rapidly.
Yes, please.
This helps also maybe responding a bit to the question you were asking about urbanization before and the role of municipality. And I'm not taking a Swiss example. In this case, I take an example of my neighbors, Italy. So there is in city of Milano, they have a food policy that they developed still after Expo Milan 2015, and now they just evaluated. they expanded now into a policy that is linking several cities around the world. And if you look at this policy, you realize that it's taking all the system together, both the consumption model, the consumers, where they go, how it develops, right? And then all the discussion that is linking with peri-urban. Peri-urban agriculture means new standards, because you have to make sure that you're doing something that is not polluting and so on and so on. So it's a quite an interesting contribution. I think we will see much more of this in the future, and this will be really, I think, really helpful. Also because what is important is not putting one against the other, is not dividing. The message that is giving also the experience from India is that you are trying to unify, to go together, and then discuss together about possible changes. And this is also key.
I think this is extremely important. We need to avoid the polarization or the divide. Otherwise, we can't move together quickly. Gabor, another, I think, 2 questions we can allow. And I ask also the speakers to respond very briefly so that we can cover them. Gabor, are you there? It seems that we lost him. Oh, no, there he is.
Here I am. Sorry, I just muted myself. So another European focused question. The European Commission, DG Agri, is actually pushing for living labs in agroecology. And Michael Kugler is asking whether BMZ has actually the same approach that DG Agriculture has on pushing agroecology, or they talk about something different. So this is
Maria Tekulve, I think this is a question to you, if you can respond to that one.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much. I'm afraid, since I'm not from the Ministry of Agriculture, I cannot answer that question. But what I can say is that we, and this is a German and even EU position, maybe some of you know, we support, as the government at present, the recommendations on the agroecological approaches. So the negotiations are ongoing, and that is a German and EU position. But I cannot speak on behalf of the Ministry of Agriculture, sorry.
Very wise. Gabor, would you have a last question?
Yes, another question. The European country, France. Aline, why you speak about agroecology only and not about organic farming in France, which is an important movement in agroecology, has strong advantages, a strong market, a strong experience for conversion, a strong acceptance with consumers, a system of certification. So why is the focus on agroecology in France and not so much on organic?
Aline Bois, you have the floor.
Alors en France, et c'est comme ça qu'on l'a écrit dans la loi d'avenir, on dit que l'agriculture biologique fait partie des systèmes de production agroécologique. Donc, dans notre plan d'action agroécologique, dans notre plan, oui, on soutient l'agriculture biologique, mais on veut aller au-delà de l'agriculture biologique. On dit que pas forcément tout le monde peut aller tout de suite vers l'agriculture biologique, mais les principes d'agroécologie doivent concerner tous les agriculteurs. Donc pour nous, l'agriculture biologique fait bien partie de l'agroécologie. Il y a un certificat, il y a un cahier des charges, alors que pour nous, l'agroécologie, c'est plus des principes, il n'y a pas de cahier des charges en tant que tel, et une valorisation différente chez les consommateurs. Mais l'agriculture biologique fait bien partie de l'agroécologie.
Organic agriculture is part of agroecology. I think that's a conclusion we can all agree to. There are so many questions in the chat which we are not able to address, unfortunately, but be ensured that we will analyze them and take them up, if possible, in the Food Policy Forum for Change in future sessions. Due to a time which is already very advanced, I want to thank you here and want to hand over to my colleague Louise Luticolt. She is the Executive Director of IFORM Organics International, and she has now the difficult task to extract the main conclusions of what we have been discussing today and what she was hearing. Louise, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Frank, and thank you to all the distinguished panelists for the contributions, as well as to the questions, because you can see what is, let's say, interesting people in this important debate about agroecology. We focused on policies and how policies actually make the framework and create the space for, if you like, agroecology to happen. Because what I've heard a lot is that agroecology is a bottom-up approach. And that was so heartening to me to see how farmers are involved, how consumers are involved, how agroecology creates the space. And maybe this is also a thing that I want to say. What I didn't hear is how we can focus on this incentivizing other parts of policies that are currently happening. So we've been focusing a lot on how we want to create the space, how we want to make this vision of an agriculture in sync with nature and contributing to the SDGs happening. But I think there are some hurdles also to take there in terms of maybe abandoning some policies. And I think that is some of the work that we need to do and that we also have to look into. And for that, and that's what I want to come to, we are working with BioVision, the Millennium Institute, IFORM Organics International, working with FAO on the Food Policy Forum for Change. And this is a policy forum where policy makers themselves can have a peer-to-peer exchange, meetings and webinars, and create a community of practice and how they handle in their localities policies for agroecology, and maybe also how to get rid of policies that are really countering agroecology. Policymakers themselves are guiding and coaching each other, but of course also the project supports with that. We will do also, and that's the role of the Millennium Institute, impact modeling in some of the countries, and seeing also and creating evidence, that's where we talked about, on how agroecology contributes to the Sustainable Development Goals. And maybe that's one other link that there is with policy and science. We talked a lot about evidence. The one thing is that evidence is needed to make policy, but we also know so well that policy is actually there to support creating evidence. That's another thing I didn't hear, but I think we should look into the amounts of money that is going into research for supporting agroecology. And also, therefore, it's so important to have this broad approach, as our colleagues from France have shown us. So the project, the policy for the Food Policy Forum for Change, excuse me, will then in-depth guide a couple of governments. We focus on Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, so that we can provide the expertise to cover different challenges which there are in policy development. And what is also important for us, that again, the results of this we can share at the international fora that are related to agroecology. And that is not only our friends from FAO, but we have also talked about the importance of climate change and the relation of agroecology with climate change and other important relations like nutrition, sun, etc. So that's in short what our Food Policy Forum for Change is. This is an invitation to policymakers to come there. The policymakers we've heard today, they are part of this forum, and if you want to learn more from them, please also be part. We will answer all the questions in writing. Then I hear from my colleague Gabor that all the questions that you've posed in the chat and in the Q&A today which also guided our discussion, we will come back to you and respond to them so that you also can have an answer to your query.
Thank you very much, Louise, for these concluding remarks. I think we had a very rich discussion, a very rich session. Thanks all who contributed to it, particularly to the speakers and panelists, but also to the colleagues from iFarm Organics, BioVision Foundation, and the Millennium Institute for making it possible. And last but not least, to our partners, FAO, the German Ministry of Development and Cooperation, and the Swiss Development Cooperation Agency. Thank you so much for this rich discussion, and I hope to be connected with you soon through the Food Policy Forum for Change. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.